Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
A young blonde with long legs sat down on her desk and looked around the office, glancing at her coworkers. Putting her foot on her leg, she adjusted her short skirt and took out a cigarette, definitely lighting it. The other reporters couldn't say a word to her, for they knew Kathy was having an affair with the chief, and any careless word in her direction could have irreparable consequences. Take a drag on your cigarette. She felt like the ruler of the office, able to nail anyone who looked at her funny. The girl was overconfident, although she didn't stand out among her colleagues, except for her spectacular appearance, short skirt, and blouse with a deep neckline, showing off her breasts. Having worked at Washington's fashion magazine for a number of years, Katie was thinking of taking advantage of her connection with the chief to take a higher position with a corresponding salary and other privileges. Knowing that the editor-in-chief was highly respected by Joe, she couldn't say a word to him, though she kept thinking about taking over Lily's office. Katie didn't worry about how she looked, because she always knew that the chief would appreciate the next spectacular outfit and slap her on the ass as soon as her co-workers looked away or stared at their computers. Openly using her position, she did not hesitate to show her superiority over her colleagues, looking down on them and constantly joking at journalists who were unable to respond to her in a dignified manner. Remembering how she had appeared in this office, Katie was not ashamed to admit to herself that she had done everything possible and impossible to win the chief's favor. For a long time, he stared at her and licked his lips when he noticed the beauty's luscious form. A couple of months put everything in place, and after the first date, she invited Joe to her home. Finding himself in the predator's trap, he couldn't resist, and from that day on, he became a driven boss, from whom he could always get a more interesting assignment. Using this, she, not infrequently, traveled to the capital and other countries, interviewed popular bloggers and show business stars, creating interesting and fascinating articles. Other journalists were outraged by this, as they rarely left the city and interacted with second-rate stars, whose article no one would ever read. Looking at her watch, Katie noticed that it was lunchtime, put out her cigarette, and headed to the kitchen to have a cup of coffee and discuss the latest news in the world of show business with her colleagues. "How are you doing? Did you meet Rocky yesterday?" questioned one colleague to another, having brewed himself a cup of strong tea. "Yeah, had trouble finding where he lives." The chief had promised an interview with a famous blogger, but it turned out that he was just another loser who got fame because of an unfortunate fall on camera. Talking to him was not interesting and, to put it mildly, not exactly pleasant. "But money can't smell," Lucy replied. "You're the lucky one." "I had to go to a village outside of town yesterday to interview a singer whose voice improves crops. I don't know about the crops, but when she started singing, for a moment I thought my ears were going to bleed. It was so painful and unbearable that I wanted to run away, cower in a corner and cry." Tony complained back. "I thought that being a journalist in a fashion magazine was something special, a chance to meet famous and talented people whose stories were fascinating and gave me goosebumps." Nanny said, coming into the kitchen for a little refreshment. "Why are you always complaining? I just came back from the capital. Do you know how tired I was during the flights, and there was no place in business class? I had to fly with ordinary people who not only can't earn money for a better ticket, but also, it seems, don't know how to use deodorant." Kathy got into the dialogue. "Oh well, why should you complain? You have all the most interesting stars who are ready to give interviews for hours. I had to listen to this rural vocalist for more than 5 hours in order to write even a small note. And then I spent the rest of the night picking up the material, which is not interesting to call interesting." Tony responded categorically. "But it's not my fault that I'm the best at what I do, and Joe gives me the most difficult and demanding assignments," Katie replied, trying again to tease her colleagues. "Yeah, or just someone who sleeps with the chief unlike the rest of them, pulling up her short skirt day and night." "Quiet, Trey," Lucy muttered, hoping no one would hear that. "Did you say something?" Katie asked, even though she'd heard it perfectly well the first time. No, you imagined it," Lucy replied, embarrassed, afraid that her colleague would report her to the boss and she would have to find another job. "Good, because Joe and I can find you an interesting assignment somewhere in Michigan, where you'll interview a horse, imitating the sounds of other animals." What a laugh that would be. Katie continued to tease her wryly. I'm fine here, Lucy replied, hoping to avoid a conflict situation in its infancy. Her airplane is bad, black. The screen is not real. The champagne is too cheap. I realize that you're a lady of blue blood, but don't forget that we grew up on the same street. Tony answered whip-smartly. So what of it? Who are you? Who am I? Katie reacted to her colleague's remark. I'm a journalist, just like you. We have the same position. Yes, the salary sometimes differs, but here the reason is not in professionalism or experience, but in the fact that I have an affair with the chief, but there is no way. Continued to tease his colleague, the man with a cup of hot coffee in his hands. Oh, who's stopping you? Maybe Joe will like you too. No, thank you. I'm happy with my salary and responsibilities. I just remember when we used to race down by the river and you accidentally stepped on a cow patty. Then you were not such a princess as you are now, and now you are the city's royalty. Don't say a word to her. Don't look crooked. Tony didn't stop, though he realized that this conversation could jeopardize his further existence in the office. Unlike you, I'm abroad, and I'll be taking Lily's place soon, Katie replied, wanting to take the floor or run to the principal's office and tell him everything that had happened in the kitchen. Her face flushed red, her eyes glowed with an evil glow, her nostrils flared like those of an angry bull ready to pounce on his prey at any moment. Well, so who is there to take my place early? Kindly asked a mature woman of short stature in a business suit who came into the kitchen. It's just a joke. You're our favorite boss, and there's no substitute for you. Katie's voice changed dramatically, and she was more afraid of the editor-in-chief than respectful. After all, she was not afraid to tell the chief the truth and could affect the girl's income. That's better, or now when assignments are distributed, Nanny or Lucy will go to Milan, and you will interview an aspiring singer who decided to gain popularity through a relationship with a famous producer. Why can't I go to Milan? Indignantly asked Tony, who also doesn't mind going abroad and attending a fashion show, looking at beautiful girls in expensive dresses. Have you gotten your passport yet? Asked Lily in response. Not yet, but I will definitely take care of it soon. Well, when you do, then we'll talk. So should I tell the chief that you have taken on a singer of non-traditional orientation, or how with humor in the voice? Asked the woman, glancing at the real nearby blonde. No thanks, but I'd like to go to Italy. Anyway, only there I will be accepted as their own and cannot distinguish from the model. Oh, you're so modest, but go to the chief and tell him. If he approves of your candidacy, you will go to Milan, and if not, they will decide who is more beautiful. I realize that such an opportunity cannot be let out. Kathy hurriedly set down her coffee cup and ran to Joe's house. Knocking on the door without waiting for an answer, she flew into the office like she was running from a fire. A man in a business suit, who was obviously on the phone with someone important, glanced at her casually and waited for her to close the door on the backside. Unwilling to obey, Kathy stayed in the office and waited for the end of the conversation. Yes, I understand, Mickey. Everything will be done to the best of my ability. You know me. No one's gonna find out. I guarantee it. Yeah, I'll be waiting. Joe finished the call and hung up. Hi, Bunny, Kathy said softly and moved closer to the chief. How many times have I told you not to barge into my office like it's your home? And if I wasn't here alone, don't you mind that I was talking to the owner of our magazine, and this conversation was confidential? Indignantly asked Joe, who wanted to raise his voice, but didn't do it when he saw the blonde's gorgeous cleavage. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know you had such an important conversation. Is it true that one of us has to go to Milan to attend a fashion show and interview the fashion designer Pablo Medin? Unable to contain her curiosity, Katie asked. Yes, really. Lily should come to see me in an hour and we'll decide together which one of you will go. You mean you haven't decided yet? Because I might get offended. You don't have to get mad at me. You realize that everyone's talking about our affair, and it's bad for my image. I will not be treated as a serious and strict boss if I will tolerate the constant antics on your part and even reward trips to the fashion capital. I think I deserve this trip more than anyone. What is it? I'll show you, Katie said as she locked the door. Realizing that no one would be able to enter, the girl slowly approached the boss and began to undo the buttons on her blouse. Joe understood where this was leading, and he had no power to refuse or resist. For the next half hour, the entire office heard only the heavy breathing of the boss, and with each passing moment realized that the chance of anyone getting this assignment was getting smaller and smaller. After the private conversation, Katie left the office, fixed her skirt, and began to comb her hair defiantly, then fixed her lipstick, which had miraculously disappeared from her lips in the chief's office. "Lily, the director asked you to come to him," the girl said with a satisfied expression, looking toward the editor-in-chief. "Is there any point in going to discuss something?" sighed the woman, realizing that the chief hardly thinks with his head and made a decision without her participation. "He's waiting for you," answered Katie, who wanted to hurry the boss, but came to her senses in time, having remembered about subordination. Staring at the monitor of her computer, the girl waited impatiently for Lily's return, anticipating the expected, but no less pleasant and exciting news. Once in her office, the editor-in-chief wasn't even there for 5 minutes. Hurriedly returning to her office a couple of moments later, she went out into the common room to the reporters to make an important announcement. "Lucy and Nanny, you get a joint project and attend the next party with the owners of the new combine. Tony, you get a gig as an aspiring rapper at Club Poseidon. Katie, you can pack your bags for Milan." "Yeah, what a surprise." Tony started chiming the tray, glancing at Kathy's grinning face. "But at least it's not to the countryside looking for female vocalists, and that's good," Nanny sighed in relief. "I told you that everything will fall into place and everyone will get what they deserve," Kathy said with her head held high, once again demonstrating her superiority over her colleagues. Leaving the workplace, the girl took the prepared ticket and assignment to prepare questions for the interview and take some good pictures. Returning home, she started hurriedly packing, going through exquisite dresses, expensive shoes, and jewelry. Several hours passed like an instant, but the girl still could not find the dress she wanted to show in Milan. In the morning, a few hours before the flight, she managed to stop by several boutiques and choose the most expensive, spectacular, and revealing dress that would make her the centerpiece of the fashion show. After taking a bottle of water and dropping off her luggage, Katie headed to the plane and took her seat according to the ticket she had purchased. Next to her sat a woman with a child, and the girl could not understand where such seemingly modest people got the money for business class. The boy was constantly talking, and it annoyed Katie, so she distanced herself from everything by turning on loud music in her headphones. The people around her annoyed her because they were unworthy to be around a popular journalist of a fashionable glossy magazine. Upon arrival, Kathy checked into one of the older and incredibly expensive hotels in the center of the city. Joe made every effort to create a comfortable environment for his subordinate, and nothing interfered with the preparation of a great interview. Having rested, had breakfast, and walked around Milan, the girl almost forgot that she had to prepare a number of questions. Otherwise, she would look stupid and unprofessional. Back at the hotel, Katie made brief notes and, paying attention to the time, realized that it was time to get ready for the fashion show. The presentation of a new line of clothing was being held in a building that looked like a Gothic-style palace. The sharp edges and spires were striking in their beauty. At the same time, the ancient structure resembled Dracula's castle and scared the crap out of Katie. Taking a few steps on the red carpet, she felt like the Queen of Great Britain walking to her throne. When the servants opened the large gilded gates, Katie almost squealed with delight, but discreetly made her way inside as she was in a hurry to get to the start of the show. After taking a couple of photos, she started looking for the fashion designer and almost mistook him for a nice and caring waiter who offered her a glass of champagne. Having finally met Pablo, Katie asked him some questions and got some very interesting answers. Of course, there were problems due to the fact that the girl did not know English well enough, and with Italian she had even worse. But she and the fashion designer managed to understand each other. The man paid attention to the fact that the girl was not experienced enough to communicate with him, but her beauty smoothed out this problem. At first, Pablo even wanted to call the office of the magazine and complain about Kathy. Well, he forgave her. But the vulgar dress, picked up in Washington, he was embarrassed much more. At one point, the fashion designer couldn't stand it any longer and recommended that Kathy go back to the hotel. because wearing such an outfit would be mistaken for an easygoing girl, and it would cause her a lot of trouble. What? How dare you? Do you know how much the dress cost? Katie, who had paid a month's salary for it, objected indignantly. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about rags, Pablo replied rudely, tired of the tastelessness. Who the hell are you? Today everyone knows you, and in a week I will forget your name, said the angry journalist, who decided to switch to you. I think it's time for you to leave. If you think otherwise, our guard will help you find your way out, calmly responded the fashion designer, who waved his finger at the bodyguard. Thank you, I'll find it myself. Katie snorted, realizing that she needed to leave the building immediately to avoid more problems. Back at the hotel, she couldn't calm down for a few more hours and admiring herself in the mirror. She resented the fact that the fashion designer didn't appreciate her dress. A few hours later, Kathy received a call from the chief asking how the meeting had gone. Kathy decided not to talk about the incident and lied that everything had been great. An hour later, Joe called back. His voice was excited. It went well, you said. He began. Yeah, what happened? Kathy replied with apprehension in her voice. I just got a call from the fashion show complaining about a rude girl who looked like a country bumpkin dressed as a girl with easy access. What do you think you're doing? I didn't send you there to embarrass me. Joe continued indignantly. He started insulting me, so I answered him. The girl tried to justify herself. It's your job to listen to what you're told and write it down, not to answer. No one is asking your opinion. I explained these simple basics of your job clearly enough. Don't talk to me like I'm a little girl or a stupid girl. But you're not a little girl. I have my doubts about the other one. Just because you can satisfy me doesn't mean you can be rude to people and jeopardize the reputation of our magazine. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. I'm supposed to listen and be quiet, Katie shouted, tired of not being treated like a valued professional, and put the phone down. Having prematurely ended the conversation, Joe tried to dial the girl again, but realized that she did not want to continue the conversation. Katie returned home in the morning and spent the day in bed, as she was allowed to rest after the road and build up her strength before going to work. The next morning, she takes a long time to get ready before driving to the office, as she has to shine in front of her coworkers. Not giving up hope of taking the editor-in-chief position, Katie hurries to work and manages to run into the office a couple of minutes before the boss shows up. Joe was still angry at the girl after the recent conversation, so he decided to bypass her without even looking at Kathy. Such an attitude offended her, but she was still angry with the chief too, so she decided that it was better to avoid the conflicts, as she didn't want to find out the relationship at all. During the next lunch break, Katie did not miss the opportunity to talk to her colleagues and show them her superiority. But how were the last 2 days? Tony asked his colleagues. It's been unbelievable, Lucy replied. Yeah, unbelievably awful and disgusting, Nanny added. I agree. I never thought that a corporate party could be so boring and dull. How's it going with you? Oh, I've been to that Poseidon. When I got there a half hour early, I thought all the audience and guests would gather later, but it turned out that those 5 people of dubious appearance who were standing nearby were all those who decided to listen to this rapper. I understand everything, of course, but I've never heard a more horrible voice. It seemed to me that the song should have a sense or at least understandable words, but here everything is just past. Disappointed, said Tony, who had clearly had a better weekend than his colleagues. And I was on a plane with a creepy mom and a clingy kid. But that's not even close, because in Milan I was promised the most expensive hotel. But they gave me some lair with no safe and no free minibar, intervened Katie, who decided to complain about her business trip. Yes, indeed, no minibar. It's a disaster. How can you only tolerate such conditions? Replied Tony with a sneer, who was tired of listening to the royal requests of his colleague. I don't know, but I hope it will be easier when I'm editor-in-chief, Katie replied, not realizing that her colleague was openly joking with her and grinning, waiting for some stupid or ridiculous reaction. Who's going to fire me again? Said Lily, who had not caught the journalists at their desks again. Oh, come on. No one is going to fire you. But we understand the age, and grandchildren will soon start growing up. Someone has to take care of them. Kathy replied, her voice softening considerably as she was startled by the unexpected appearance of her boss. The grandchildren are still small, so they'll be with the nanny, but I will try to bring you up. That's your first concern, by the way, Lily said, glancing at Katie. What about me? I'm always ready to do anything you tell me to do. We'll see about that. Finish up and get back to your desks. I have some interesting assignments. The editor-in-chief summarized and went to her office to prepare the paperwork. Having received the next assignment, Katie decided that the best way to take the place of the boss was to start to serve, earning conditional pluses. Adhering to this plan, the girl openly sycophanted, running on all tasks and assignments, performing them not qualitatively enough, but as fast as possible. Day by day, she collects pluses and has no doubt that in the near future she will take Lily's place or at least become her assistant. A couple more days go by and Joe asked everyone to take a break from work and gather in his office in 10 minutes. Come on in, have a seat. I have what I think is great news for you, Joe said as soon as his subordinates entered his office. Have you decided to fire Kathy? Tony decided to make a joke, but he realized from the look on the director's face that the joke had failed. I'll think about which of the journalists will be at our magazine, the boss answered, frowning one eyebrow. So what did you want to tell us? Lily wondered, trying to prevent a conflict situation and to save Tony from the chief's anger. Very soon there will be a new employee in our team. It is a young girl who will become an ornament of our team and, I hope, will help to increase the rating of the magazine. Another journalist, Lucy, asked. No, your staff is fully staffed and does not need additional personnel. On the contrary, there is one more extra place, but that's not what I'm talking about now. I've decided to bring in an assistant editor-in-chief to lighten the load on Lily. Besides, fresh ideas and creative projects won't interfere with the development of our magazine. What? An assistant editor in my place? Katie was very indignant, not hiding her displeasure. What do you mean, Doris? Someone promised it to you, Joe retorted dryly and rudely. I'm supposed to be Lily's assistant. I'm the only one worthy of the position. I've been working in the company for more than a year. I deal with the most difficult tasks and I know what our magazine needs, continued the girl. Maybe you'll take my place right away, Lily decided to joke. Maybe, but you're not going to quit yet, Katie replied wryly, not realizing that she was being mocked. All right, that's enough of this buffoonery. I am the boss here, and I decide who will work in what position. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow at the most, there will be a new person in the office. Please respect my choice and understand it. If anyone objects, we'll say goodbye. And I'm not kidding, Joe threatened, with Nancy saying it would tame Kathy. Leaving the chief's office, the girl could not calm down in any way. On her red face were written all the emotions, all the anger, which she was ready to take out on the first person she met. Realizing this, neither Lily nor her colleagues dared to talk to Katie and tried to distance themselves from her, hiding behind their monitors. The girl ran from one corner of the office to the other, throwing pens, paper clips, and other stationery as she went. Katie wanted to go back to Joe's office and tell him what she thought of him, but she held back for fear of ruining the relationship and losing her only leverage with the boss. The next day was not much different from the previous day. Everyone was eagerly awaiting the arrival of the new girl, and only Katie was unlike herself. Her face was swollen with anger and her lips were trembling slightly, as if she were ready to pounce on the new girl and bite her, quickly freeing up her position as assistant editor. In the office, as in any team, rumors soon start to spread throughout the floors during the lunch break. Katie finds out about them too. Did you hear what they're saying in human resources? Our new girl just graduated a couple years ago, and this is her first job, Lucy told her coworkers. Yeah, there's that. And I also heard she's from some backwoods village near the city, Tony added. Great. Not only is she inexperienced, but she's a country girl. I don't know what Joe was thinking when he hired her. Kathy commented on the rumors. Maybe she's a good person or someone recommended her, Nanny suggested. Yeah, or maybe she just did the chief some kind of favor, Katie replied angrily. So she did like you? Tony asked with a smile. When he saw his colleague's face change, he regretted what he had said and wanted to leave the kitchen, but he didn't have time to do it. I may have some influence on the chief, but I didn't get the promotion. My relationship with him has no bearing on my career, Katie said firmly, even though she realized she was deceiving not only her colleagues, but herself as well. Anyway, nobody asked us, and we'll have to work with whoever comes. Nanny summarized and went to wash the cups, cleaning up after the lunch break. But we'll see about that. I realize we're not in the capital, but how can a redneck talk to the stars? And since when did we start hiring everyone in the office? I feel like the chief forgot to lock the door and hired the first person who walked in. Maybe she wanted to warm up or thought that they feed the homeless here, continued aggressively saying Katie to the girl, whom no one had seen yet. Well, why would you do that? Maybe she's a good person and she'll make a good specialist, Lily suggested. Please, how can a recent student with no work experience turn out to be a good assistant to the editor-in-chief? We used to invite specialists from the capital, even a guy from England, and now we'll spend a couple more years picking up staff under the bridge. But don't go overboard. You're not the capital's FIFA either, the editor-in-chief replied sharply. The girl wanted to try something to object, but realized that any harsh word would put a cross on her efforts and finally spoil the relationship with the team. After the lunch break, Lily again handed out tasks, among which there was nothing interesting and unusual. Katie had to prepare a story about the trip to Milan. Lucy and Tony were preparing their materials for the issue. Nanny had the opportunity to visit the newly opened gourmet restaurant and interview the owner, a well-known restaurateur by Washington standards. Deciding not to put the work in a long box, Nanny asked Joe to leave early and called a cab and went to the restaurant. Seeing in front of her and the luxurious establishment, the girl could not believe that it was really a restaurant because it looked more like an exhibition center or an art gallery. At that moment, the door opened in front of Nanny and a cheerful gray-haired man came out to greet the guest. "Hello, are you Nanny?" the stranger asked kindly. "Yes, excuse me, and you?" shyly answered the girl. "I'm Anthony, the owner of this establishment. Nice to meet you. I just have a few questions for you." "Let's go inside and I will answer all your questions," Anthony answered and invited Nanny inside, showing himself as a real gentleman and gallant man. "How long have you been in this business?" asked the girl the first question as soon as she sat down at the table. "My first restaurant was opened in 2007. I have been passionate about cooking since childhood. I adored the way my mother cooked. The first establishment was dedicated to simple home cooking, but over time the level of dishes grew, as did their variety." "How was this restaurant fundamentally different from others?" Nanny continued the interview, though she noticed in the man's eyes that he was much more interested in looking at her than in answering stupid and not particularly interesting questions. "The main difference of our restaurant is unique chefs invited from Europe. They are able to surprise even the most demanding visitors." Having asked more than 10 more no less boring questions, Nanny finished the interview, took a photo with Anthony and headed for the exit. The man, who did not hide his sympathy, offered the girl to have a cup of coffee and continue the conversation, but was refused. The journalist was confused by the age difference because Anthony was a little older than her parents and she was not in a position to give hope to such a mature man, even if he was a very interesting, imposing man. The next morning was no different from the previous one. All the employees were hurrying to get to their workplaces as soon as possible, so as not to arouse the anger of the boss. Only Kathy was calm and casually chuckled at her hurried co-workers afraid of Joe. Seated on the edge of the table, the girl smoked, frankly demonstrating her fearlessness before her superiors. Lily paid attention to the journalist's behavior, but did not make any remarks as it made no sense. Arriving a little later than usual, Joe entered the office and went up to the second floor. Swinging open the doors, he entered and taking a step to the side, let a young girl pass in front of him. She was quite small in stature, wearing a drab gray suit and an off-white shirt hiding behind a jacket that was clearly not tailored to her size. The glare from her large glasses hit her eyes, but it was noticeable that she was very nervous and afraid to look at the journalists who were anticipating the chief's speech. "Meet Annabelle. She's going to be the assistant editor-in-chief. Lily, this wonderful and fragile creature is now in your hands. I hope you two will hit it off and get along quickly," Joe said. "Hello, Annabelle. Yes, she and I will work together. The good-natured woman replied kindly. My God, and this will work with us, Katie exclaimed, not hiding her attitude toward the girl. And what do you not usually and modest girl? Tony interceded. Look at her. Not only is she a redneck, but she has no taste. How is this gray mouth should work with famous personalities? Actually, she will not go to meetings or interviews. Tried to justify the appearance of the girl Lucy. So then, should we hire ugly people for the position of assistant editor-in-chief? How can such a wretch work in a fashionable glossy magazine? Did not stop Katie. Joe, hearing the girl's unflattering speech, became indignant and began to boil like a kettle that is about to steam from the spout. Kathy, to my office at once, shouted the chief, menacingly looking her straight in the eye. Hearing the chief's order, the girl was in no great hurry to obey, and defiantly and unhurriedly made her way to Joe on the carpet. Sorry, Annabelle, we have such personnel. The man apologized and left to his office. Don't worry, she's like that with everyone. Lily tried to cheer Annabelle up. I'm not worried. I've seen more like her. It's just strange that she doesn't know me at all, and she already allows herself to address another person like that. The assistant editor-in-chief replied. Meanwhile, Joe flew into his office like a bullet and, slamming the door, ran up to Katie, who had taken a seat on his desk. What do you think you're doing? Are you out of your mind or what? Maybe I should remind you where I got you out of. Angrily began to ask the man who didn't want to hear any excuses for such behavior and antics. Oh, as if I couldn't have done it without you, Katie said in response. What could you do without me? You be doing cow's tails instead of interviews. Paul called me and told me how rude you are. It's not the first time I've complained, but I put up with it. I try to get you the best assignments, and what do you get in return? Do you want mushroom hunters to find me in the woods in spring or fishermen to catch me on a fishing rod? Stop making things up. I'm dealing with her as I see fit. Don't you dare mess with Annabelle, or you'll be looking for a job somewhere else, the chief warned. But that only made Katie hotter. She nodded approvingly and put her arm around the man's shoulders to calm him down and stop yelling. At the same time, the girl was not going to stop halfway, because she saw her as a direct rival and a person who would take away her higher position. Leaving the chief's office, she returned to her desk and waited for Annabelle, who had gone with Lily for a quick tour of the office, to return. Half an hour later, the editor-in-chief and her assistant returned, not only having toured the building, but also having time to prepare new assignments for the journalist. Tony was the first to get a chance to prove his professional ability, and he had to visit the art gallery and make a small photo report. Katie didn't have any assignments, so the girls let her take care of the current tasks and finalize the old materials. Meanwhile, Lucy received an assignment according to which she should go to the Capitol and communicate with a famous singer who had gone through a difficult parting with a girl. Katie was offended that this time she was not going to the Capitol, and without thinking long, she decided to show her displeasure. Since when is Lucy going to the Capitol and not me? Do you think she's any better than me, Katie? Stop it. Annabelle, and I thought it was for the best. You still haven't submitted your last 2 articles, so focus on them, Lily replied. So you and Annabelle are the ones who decided to send someone who doesn't know anything about clothes or people. You would have sent Nanny to Milan to show her favorite colorful dress to the connoisseurs of high fashion. Oh, well, laugh that would be. Katie continued to sarcasm, insulting not only her colleagues, but also the new girl. This conversation is over. Lucy's going to New York, and you're writing articles. There are more questions, affirmatively stated the editor-in-chief, who enjoys the great authority of the chief. You realize that it's stupid to mess with your boss, and the consequences can be unpredictable. Katie calmed down, or rather pretended that she had cooled down and would not continue the discussion on this topic. The next morning, Tony went to the art gallery to not only take a couple of juicy pictures with world-famous paintings, but also to interview the owner of the gallery. It turned out to be quite nice and pleasant in communication middle-aged man, who gladly answered all the questions of the journalist, showed him several unique works, the cost of which is estimated in millions of dollars. Tony is far from art and does not understand how a canvas with paints can be bought for $10 to $15 or even $50 million, but he is not required to do so. Having received answers to a number of questions prepared in advance, Tony hurried to the office to be there by lunchtime. Meanwhile, Lucy also decided to finish her work as soon as possible and flew to the capital. The day before, waking up in the hotel, she did not put off the interview with Harry in a long box and called the man. Despite all the stardom, he turned out to be a very nice and pleasant interlocutor who offered to move the interview from the recording studio to a cafe, where he could not only talk about the breakup with the girl, but also have a snack, useful to spend precious time. Meeting Lucy in the restaurant, the man seemed to stagger. The girl thought that Kathy was right and her appearance was far from ideal or the world of show business. But it turned out that she looked a lot like Harry's ex, and at first he thought that the interview was a hoax to meet the lover. After taking a couple of steps towards the girl, Harry realized that he was mistaken and met Lucy. "Hello, are you Lucy? I'm sorry. It's just that you look so much like my ex-girlfriend that I was speechless for a few moments." "Was your beloved so simple and unremarkable?" asked Lucy. "Well, she is a real beauty as well as you. Though I apologize for saying so, just emotions do not allow to speak about her otherwise." "That's okay, but thank you for the compliment. Let's get started and you can tell us what happened between you and Maddie and whose fault it was." "Maybe it's better to talk about you," tried to change the subject Harry, but quickly realized that journalists at work remains a professional and does not recognize any creep in her direction. Realizing that there was no hope to ask Lucy on a date, Harry kindly answered all the questions, poured out his soul, and revealed secrets that allow you to prepare not just an article, but a whole story that can conquer the readers of the magazine. After saying goodbye to the star, Lucy went straight to the airport and returned home in the evening to appear at work in the morning, pleasantly surprising both Lily and her new assistant with her promptness. In the meantime, the office was quiet and calm. As Lucy and Tony were absent, Nanny kept her head down, and the bosses had plenty to do without Katie. Having finished her articles earlier than she should have, she wanted to meet Annabelle and tease her again. She had already prepared a few flat, but very offensive jokes and waited impatiently for Lily's assistant. To her disappointment, all the jokes went unused as Annabelle quickly ran out of the office and left the office before she could pay attention to Katie and the look on her face. The next morning, all the co-workers reconvene in the office and turn in the materials to the assistant editor. After receiving insufficient quality and frankly raw materials, Annabelle says nothing but sits down and tries to finalize the articles, preparing them for publication. During the lunch break, she decides to have a cup of coffee and going to the kitchen, she meets the whole team actively discussing something. "Did you see the outfit she is wearing today? I thought it couldn't get any worse, but she keeps surprising me," Katie told her co-workers. "But maybe she just doesn't have taste or money," said Nanny, who seemed to be trying to justify Annabelle's behavior, but at the same time she didn't mind laughing at her choice of clothes. "What are you picking on the girl? Let her dress as she wants. The main thing is that our articles suit her, and if there will be edits, then without our interference," answered Tony, who hoped that Annabelle is a simple and modest girl, ready to do someone else's work. "Maybe you will discuss me in front of me," intervened in the dialogue Annabelle, who decided to have a little snack. "Come in and listen. We are not shy. It seems to us that you are a village simpleton, both outwardly and in the head. I don't know what you did to the boss to get you hired, but trust me, you won't be here long," Katie said rudely. Annabelle was hurt and uncomfortable, and it showed on her face. For a moment it looked like she was going to cry, but she held back her emotions, made coffee, and without a word, went back to her office. "Yeah, I thought she was going to cry." Tony commented on the situation, making sure that Annabelle was too kind to be used. "I told you she was the village idiot, and so it turned out to be. How can you work at a fashion magazine and be so soft? She's going to get eaten up in every department, whether it's finance or video production for an online magazine," Katie continued. "Frankly, I'm shocked. I'd throw my fists at you and pull your hair out for saying that, and she's just standing there listening," Lucy said. A few days pass. Annabelle begins to be bullied not only by Katie, but also by her colleagues. They do not openly harass the girl, but take advantage of her kindness by submitting increasingly poor quality articles, which are short notes and sketches. Annabelle does not respond to the offenders, but works diligently, doing her job professionally. From scraps of phrases and notes, she creates small masterpieces that increase not only the rating of the magazine, but also its readability. The relationship between Annabelle and the rest of the team continues to deteriorate. It creates constant conflicts. After the weekend, it seemed that the situation might get better and Katie would calm down somehow. But she didn't spend the 2 days relaxing, but only to come up with more hurtful jokes and bullying that could be dumped on Annabelle like a bucket of slop. Without putting them off, Katie starts making jokes about the editorial assistant as soon as she gets to work. "Oh, I see our star has stolen her grandmother's clothes again," she said when she saw Annabelle's new blouse. "What's wrong with me? I'm not bothering you. I'm just trying to do a good job and not draw attention to my humble person," answered Annabelle, but realized that Katie likes to tease her, and she's not going to stop. "You took my place, and it would be all right if the chief had hired a competent person with exquisite taste, but no, he wants a country girl. So what if I'm from the country? Does that affect my degree or my knowledge?" "It affects your looks. An assistant editor of a fashion magazine can't look worse than the bums in the dump." "Stop picking on me. You better get to work," Annabelle tried to reply, using her position of authority. Joe, who came to the climax of the dialogue, interrupted the girls and demanded that Katie come into his office. "Are you hitting on her again? How else can I explain to you that she can't be touched?" The chief tried to calm Katie down again. "Why are you so protective of her? Is she your daughter or maybe your wife? Stop making up nonsense. You know I have no one but you. Then why did she take my place? And why did you think you should get the assistant editor's job? Just because you go on the most interesting assignments doesn't make you a good employee." "Oh, that's it. So you want me to humiliate and insult her even more," said Katie, who was ready at any moment to lash out like a rabid dog at poor Annabelle. "Don't you dare touch her or I'll fire you. Believe me, if it's between the two of you, I'll throw you out on the street without a blink of an eye." "Oh, I'm not going anywhere. I'll go to any other magazine. We're not in a collective farm here. There's more choice than you think," Katie snorted back, not doubting her professionalism. "Who needs you? You think anyone else is going to give you that kind of salary? If you play this game, you won't even be writing horoscopes for the village newsletter. Remember, if you hurt her again, I'll talk to you differently. And believe me, you won't like my tone. Now go back to your desk and do whatever it takes to resolve the conflict and not make Annabelle mad. If she says one word, you say goodbye to this office and you're out of here. I hope I've made myself clear enough." "Yes," Katie shouted and stormed out of Joe's office. She wanted to go to Annabelle's office and insult her, but Lily stopped her. Realizing that the atmosphere in the team is unhealthy, the woman decided to unite Annabelle and Kathy, entrusting them with a joint project. As part of the article, the girls were to interview a famous married couple going through betrayal and separation. "Okay, we'll do it in the best way possible," Annabelle replied humbly, even though she had no desire to work together with Kathy. "Yes, we'll have everything ready as soon as possible," Katie grumbled, wanting to strangle the girl rather than work with her on the same material. Deciding not to waste any time, Annabelle immediately contacts Harvey and Nancy to set up appointments for them. She lets Katie choose who she wants to go and interview, but the girl with the perpetually disgruntled face refuses to work, explaining that she doesn't feel well. The naive and trusting assistant editor allows the girl to rest, while she herself begins to study articles about the family and their relationships, digging into dirty laundry and gossip. Meanwhile, Katie asks Joe out on a date and spends time with him. The next day, Annabelle tries to divide up the duties again, but Katie has another business to attend to. The assistant editor again enters her situation and, having called Harvey beforehand, goes to meet him. Once up on the 3rd floor, she rings the doorbell and is greeted by a man with a glass in his hand. "Hello, Annabelle. Come in. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Harvey kindly greeted the girl and invited her into the apartment. "Hello, I realize that this is a sore subject, but can you tell me what happened between you and Nancy?" Annabelle asked, having prepared a notebook, pen, and tape recorder in advance. "Probably any other person I'd chase away, but you're too nice a girl and I won't refuse. The first problems in our couple started a year ago. We traveled too much on tour and too little time for each other. I hope that my beloved will take it with understanding and soon everything will get better, but I was damn wrong. When I returned from another concert, I found her in bed with my producer. Now I don't have a producer or a wife. That's pretty much the story. I see, and you did not try to talk to your wife or to understand the causes and consequences of what happened. Annabelle looked at the man with sympathy in her eyes, but continued to responsibly ask questions in a pre-prepared list. No, I decided it was a waste of time. She had betrayed me in our marriage, so there was nothing to talk about. I understand you. I apologize for getting into personal, but how will you divide the property? Well, it's simple. We had a prenuptial agreement, according to which everyone gets what he bought during the marriage, and will not claim on someone else's property. Tell me, have you already thought about writing a song related to these events? No, I wouldn't want to capitalize on my disappointment. So now I've taken a little pause and I want to find a new producer. Okay, I get it. Annabelle answered kindly and asked a couple more formal questions, bringing the interview to its logical conclusion. Having collected the necessary materials, she left the man's apartment and immediately called his wife to meet her too. An hour later, Annabelle was already in a fashionable restaurant in the center of the city, where Nancy was waiting for her. Hello. Thank you for responding so quickly and agreeing to meet me, Annabelle said as soon as she saw the woman. You're welcome. I'm always happy to talk to journalists, replied Nancy, who used all these interviews to drum up interest in her person. Tell me, did you really cheat on your lover with his producer? Yes, and I don't regret it at all. Now Aubrey's going to take care of me and do everything he can to make me a star. Don't you feel bad about losing your marriage over this? Annabelle asked with incomprehension. Who think that marriage is something special, holy, and indestructible? Maybe, please. I've only benefited from it. While my husband bites his elbows, I have over 10 concerts scheduled. I used to have no more than one show a month, and now I'm booked more often than foreign stars. I see. So everything suits you and you don't regret what happened? No, and no again. If I had the opportunity to replay everything, I would do it again, seducing the producer right in front of my husband. Didn't you love him? I did, but that's in the distant past. Besides, I love money a lot more, and I'm tired of depending on Harvey. Thank you for your honesty. If I have any more questions, I can call you. Yeah, sure. You're a very nice and pleasant girl, so you can call anytime, Nancy replied kindly. The next morning, Annabelle began analyzing the material she had collected and preparing to write the article. Having met Katie, she offered her to work on the material together, but the girl again ignored the offer, as she had not slept well because of dancing in a nightclub. Annabelle realizes that the subordinates are frankly lazy, but does not want to go to the conflict and decides to prepare an article without her participation. Soon she meets Joe, and he reminds her that before the article is published, there should be a presentation of the material where Harvey and Nancy will be present. If they approve of the material, it will go into publication. It is strictly forbidden to disregard their opinion. Otherwise, the magazine will be sued, and there will be almost no chance to win the case. Annabelle spent a whole day to collect and prepare information, to structure it correctly, and to make the story really interesting and creative. Katie realizes that the presentation is less than 24 hours away, and she knows nothing about the upcoming publication. Asking Annabelle to cover for her won't work, so the girl decides to go another way. At night, she sneaks into the office, gets into Annabelle's computer, and downloads all the information from there. Back home, Katie carefully analyzes the material and the developments of the assistant editor to know the material as well as, and preferably better than, its author. At first, she wanted to just use the knowledge to avoid looking stupid during the presentation, but then she decided that it could be used against Annabelle and ruin the chief's good relationship with her. Arriving at work an hour early, Annabelle rushes to Joe's carpet. Hey honey, I've got Lely's presentation all set up and ready to go. Hey, what do you mean prepared? You did the paper alone. I thought it was your joint project with Annabelle. Oh, she said that the boss wouldn't lift a finger and I should do it all by myself. Katie blatantly lied, taking advantage of the principal's gullibility. Well, all right. So tonight at 20 o'clock there will be a presentation. If you do it right, I'll consider being more loyal to you and forgive you for all your recent antics, Joe replied condescendingly. I had important plans for tonight. Can we move the presentation to 6 o'clock p.m. if possible? Katie asked, realizing that Annabelle wouldn't know about it and wouldn't show up on time. Okay, I'll try to work something out. Don't forget to let Annabelle know that the meeting has been rescheduled and will be 2 hours early. Okay, I'll call her. Katie agrees, even though she realizes she won't. In the evening, everyone is preparing for the presentation and the gala event. Sumptuous outfits, an originally decorated hall, and exquisite restaurant dishes fill the space of the office, which has radically changed its appearance. Soon the first guests appear on the doorstep and are personally greeted by the Joes. Harvey and Nancy also do not make themselves wait, as if they had agreed in advance to come. Simultaneously, everyone takes their seats and the lights dim. The presentation begins, during which Kathy shines and impresses everyone with the quality of her article. Harvey and Nancy applaud. They are delighted with the material and want it to be on the cover of the magazine in the morning. At the end of the presentation, the stars and office staff were in for a little surprise, as Joe had ordered a celebratory fireworks show. Watching the night's show, he praises Katie for the job she's done, but is surprised by Annabelle's absence. "You're just lovely. The material turned out great. Harvey and Nancy are thrilled with what you've done. By the way, where's Annabelle? Did she get held up or did something happen?" Annabelle says she wasn't feeling well and couldn't attend the presentation. I have to admit, it's not the first time she's said that, and I thought she was just lazing around, ignoring the joint project. Katie continues to lie blatantly, taking advantage of the boss's gullibility. "That's weird. That's not like her at all. Maybe something really did happen." Joe began to worry. He tried to dial Annabelle, but the girl didn't answer the phone. "You see, she just doesn't have time to do her work, and you accuse me of nagging her." "Okay, I'll talk to her tomorrow." Kathy, who had successfully realized the cunning plan, was over the moon and considered the salute as a victory celebration, foreshadowing a promotion. She had no doubt that Joe would fire Annabelle, who had failed a responsible project, and Katie would take her place. While the girl drinks champagne and smiles wickedly, considering herself a winner, Harvey and Nancy decide to talk to Joe. As it turns out, they know each other well and have crossed paths more than once at celebrations. "Hey Joe, that was a great presentation. We love it. A little bit more and we would have woken up the desire to make up," admitted Harvey. "I agreed, the material was phenomenal," Nancy added. "Hi, thank you. We tried our best." Kathy did her best to get the most out of herself. Joe happily accepted the compliments. "Who's Kathy?" With a look of incomprehension in his eyes, asked Harvey. "I mean, Kathy is our journalist. She's been doing a story on you." "I don't know who we're talking about, but we were interviewed by a girl named Annabella." "That can't be right." Joe was surprised and called Katie over to introduce her to the family. "Hello, girl." Harvey and Nancy greeted the reporter synchronously. "This is Kathy. She was writing an article about your personal life and the disaster your family had to face." "This is some kind of imposter. We've been talking to a completely different, more sweet and gentle girl, and this is the first time we've seen this Kathy of yours," Harvey replied, causing Joe to look surprised. "You must be confused about something," Katie interjected, but realized from the look on the stars' faces that she had done it in vain. "So you're not only a fraud and an imposter, but you're also cheeky," Nancy retorted, realizing that Kathy was using someone else's work and passing off the article as her own. Joe put the simple puzzle together in his head and realized what she was talking about, trying not to slip up in front of his friends. He apologizes for the inconvenience and, grabbing Katie's hand, leads her away. "Now tell it like it is or I'll fire you," Joe threatened. "Tell me what?" "I was getting ready, but it was really Annabelle who drove up to meet them. But I wrote the article myself." Katie continued to deny it. "Tell the truth or you'll be out collecting change tomorrow," the chief said even more threateningly, shaking the girl violently. "I didn't do anything. I just downloaded the article from her computer." "Did you do something with it? Why isn't Annabelle at the presentation?" "She just doesn't know. She thinks the meeting is at 8 p.m., Katie admitted and started crying to elicit pity from the man. Joe no longer gives in to the girl's tears as he has lost the last of his trust in her. Running to his car, he got behind the wheel and without wasting a minute, He headed to Annabelle's house to apologize for the embarrassment and invite the girl to the party. As he pulled up to the driveway, he met the girl just as she left for the party scheduled for 8 p.m. Running up to Annabelle, Joe felt guilty and wanted to fall to his knees in front of her, but held back to save the face of the powerful principal. "Hi, Annabelle. No need for a cab. I'll drive you myself." "Hello, Joe. Is something wrong?" Annabelle asked anxiously, as she didn't expect to see her boss outside her house. "Get in the car. I'll explain everything on the way." "Tell me," Annabelle said as soon as she got into the chief's car and buckled up, realizing that this situation was unpleasant. "I don't even know where to start. The thing is, the presentation has already taken place," Joe began to tell her, stammering all the time. "How did it happen without me?" "That's exactly the problem. Kathy stole your work and passed it off as her own. To set you up, she asked me to move the presentation to 6 p.m., and I fell for it. Please forgive me for that. Do you want me to fire her?" "No, don't. I realize she doesn't like me, and I don't blame her. She thinks I'm taking her place, even though I don't see the logic in it, because I'm not applying to be a journalist. You're a good person. Thank you for understanding." Joe sighed with relief, realizing that he had avoided a conflict situation. After arriving at the party, Annabelle does not communicate with Katie and does not pay attention to her. Meeting the family, she receives words of gratitude and informs that she has prepared another surprise, which the journalist did not manage to steal. As it turned out, Annabelle prepared a small slideshow, collecting unique photos that are almost impossible to find on the web. This caused general delight and applause, but Katie, embittered at everyone, ran away from the party. The next morning, everyone was waiting impatiently for Kathy's arrival, realizing that after yesterday, she was waiting for a serious conversation with the chief. As soon as the girl appeared in the office, Lily invited her to her room to prepare her for the dialogue with Joe, and at the same time to try to shame her a little. The woman tried to see in Katie the torment of conscience or regret, but after a couple of minutes of communication realized that she would find neither the first nor the second. Realizing that dialogue was useless, she let the journalist go, allowing her to go to the chief on the carpet. "Hello, Joe. You wanted to see me?" "Well, hello, Katie. Come in. Close the door and don't forget to lock it with the key," the man answered in a rather soft and calm voice. For a moment, the girl thought that there would be no scandal, but she was wrong. "Come here, before I strangle you," said the chief in a voice sharply coarsened with anger. "I'll explain everything. There's a reasonable explanation. You lied to me, made a fool of me in front of famous people and my friends, stole from Annabelle, and you want me to listen to you. I'm sorry, I won't do it again." Katie began to childishly apologize, realizing that any excuses were meaningless. "You're not in kindergarten. If it wasn't for me being nice to you, you'd be in the stock market by now. Get it through your chicken head. If Annabelle's husband comes to the office tomorrow, it won't just be you, it'll be all of us. What are you trying to do? You want to feed the whole staff. How are you gonna look them in the eye after that?" Joe tried to shout at Kathy, but he could tell by the look on her face that it was hopeless. "Why are you so scared of her husband? He's some kind of gangster or something." "I wish he was a gangster," the man replied sadly and sent Kathy away as he didn't want to see her again. Trying not to stir up office conflict, he instructed Lily to find her a job that would keep her out of Annabelle's sight for a few days. Joe hoped that this would be enough for the situation at work to resolve itself, and Annabelle's husband did not want to meet with his faker wife's boss. During the lunch break, Katie behaved discreetly. At one point, other journalists thought that she ran away from the office, but returning to their workplaces, noticed that the girl simply did not stick her nose out from behind her computer. Toward the end of the workday, Lily let everyone go early so she could talk to Katie one-on-one. She knew there was no point in appealing to reason, so she simply reminded the journalist of who she was and where she belonged. "Katie, I'm not going to argue or get personal, but I will remind you that I am the editor-in-chief and Annabelle is my assistant. Yes, you have a relationship with Joe, but if you ever hurt Annabelle again, I will make your life in the office unbearable. I hope you hear me and understand." "Yes, Lily, I'll try to control myself," Katie said with difficulty, not liking the idea of trying to control her. Okay, try. In the meantime, I've arranged a business trip for you to California. There's gonna be a little rock festival there. They say it's not just young bands, but forgotten legends as well. Take a little trip, clear your head, and get some work done. Hopefully, it'll help you come to your senses. Otherwise, we'll have to say goodbye. Thank you. I won't let you down, said the journalist, who didn't want to go, but couldn't refuse the assignment prepared by her boss and editor-in-chief. Returning home, Katie leisurely packed her things and drove to the train station. Having bought a ticket, she did not want to get on the bus, but she realized that there was no choice and she had to go to California. Once there, Kathy tried to rent the most expensive hotel, but even the presidential suite looked worse than her first apartment. Realizing that this hideous interior surrounding her on all sides was the best thing in town, Katie became even more sad. She had just recently been in Milan interviewing a famous fashion designer, and tomorrow she had to attend a rock concert in an abandoned hangar, which, if the circumstances were unfortunate, could be her last. The next morning, she tried to find a decent restaurant and at least entertain herself by visiting a spa. Realizing that time is inexorable, the girl tried to order a cab and found out that no driver wants to come even close to this hangar. Realizing that the party would be memorable, Katie dreamed of escaping, but couldn't do it as she didn't want to lose her job. Finding herself in the hangar, she was pleasantly surprised because outside the sad and dull building inside was filled with light and spectators who supported their favorite rock performers. The girl managed not only to make some bright photos, but also to have a good time, forgetting about all the bad things. Back in Washington, Katie thought that she would be able to get away from the problems at work and avoid socializing with Annabelle. Keeping her promise to Lily and Joe, the next morning she rushes to work in good spirits and, showing up at the office before anyone else, prepares a fresh article for publication. Other co-workers also come into the office and, surprised to see Kathy so early, go about their business. Half an hour later, Annabelle appears in the office. Drawing attention to herself, the staff began to laugh quietly, trying to hide a smile. The girl's new dress was so ridiculous and scary that even Lily could hardly contain her emotions. "Oh my God, look at this miracle in feathers." Katie, who had promised herself to keep quiet until the last moment, couldn't stand it. "It's you." Tony tried to stop her colleague. "Don't you look in the mirror when you go to work? The scarecrow was prettier than you." Of course, I understand everything, but it is impossible to keep silent," continued the girl. "Why are you always picking on me?" "I didn't touch you. I didn't hurt you," Annabelle answered. "And you try to say a word to me, I'll put you in your place. And I don't care about work. I'll be wagging my finger tomorrow and there will be a line of people like Joe coming to offer me a job." "Are you sure?" Annabelle asked, looking the girl straight in the eye. "I'm sure, but who else would hire you? If it wasn't for our good-natured chief. You're an ugly woman with no taste, and I truly feel sorry for you. I don't understand how you could be invited to a fashion magazine, because people like you should be scaring crows in the garden and organizing rallies against the infringement of women's rights." After receiving a barrage of unfair criticism and listening to the wave of insults, Annabelle could not stand it and began. She wanted to respond to Katie in an equally defiant and insolent manner, but tears prevented her from saying a word. Realizing that she had been humiliated in front of everyone, Annabelle runs away. The others realized that this could turn into a real scandal. While colleagues begin to murmur among themselves and discuss the consequences of what happened, Katie stands with her nose held high because she is proud of herself and wants to hear compliments from other journalists. She is even happier that the path to the assistant editor's seat is free again. The next morning, Annabelle does not appear at work, and Katie is finally convinced that she was able to get rid of her rival, keeping her from taking a better position. Joe was on a business trip and was unaware of what had happened. When he arrived at the office, he noticed that Annabelle was absent and asked where the girl had disappeared to. None of the journalists dared to answer him, and Katie hid behind the monitor so that she was not visible at all. Realizing that no one would answer his question, the man invited Lily to his office, realizing that only this saintly woman could tell him everything that had happened during his absence. "Come in, sit down. Tell me where Annabelle has disappeared to." "You see, Joe, something happened here, and I'm not sure that Annabelle will come to the office again. The woman began to crumple, not knowing how to tell about what happened and delicately choose the words. What happened? Did someone hurt her? The boss asked excitedly. Well, you could say that. Who and what dared to say to her? Angrily continued the interrogation Joe, although he already assumed that it was about Katie. Nobody seemed to mean any offense, but it was awkward. Hurry up, Lily, we may not have much time. It's Katie. She made a joke of the girl's appearance and she cried. Oh God, I'm so sick of you. The women's group is worse than a viper's den, Joe exclaimed, clutching his head. But I wanted to stop it, but I didn't have time. The woman tried to justify herself, afraid of losing her job. Get Kathy, if it's not too much trouble, the man replied kindly, though his eyes showed the anger he was ready to lash out at anyone who didn't protect Annabelle. Katie, the chief wants to see you, Lily shouted as she left the chief's office. Katie realized that this did not bode well, but accepted her lack of choice by calmly following the closed door. You've lost your fear, I warned you, I asked you, I begged you. But why are you so stupid? It's so hard for you not to touch her. You decided to play with fire. Now it's going to be bad for all of us and you first of all. Why are you so worried? She's offended. She'll be back tomorrow and everything will be fine. And if she quits, good riddance. I'd rather fire you. Although maybe it's better to run away first, for example, in Spain or better in Australia. So that's surely not found, said Joe and began frantically running around the office, gathering his things. What's the matter with you? What are you afraid of? Can you explain it to me? Asked Kathy, clearly not understanding what was going on. If her husband comes, you'll understand why I'm making such a fuss. That country girl has a husband. Oh, you're funny. Why are you afraid of him? He's probably a tractor driver or a watchman in a candy factory. Go away, shouted the chief, who did not want to continue an empty conversation with an annoying journalist. Grabbing his cell phone, Joe wanted to call Annabelle and tell her what he didn't know about what had happened. He hoped he could explain everything and have time to apologize for Katie's behavior, but it was too late. Leaving the chief's office, the girl opened the door and saw a tall man blocking the passage in front of her. Realizing that there was no way to make it up, Katie took a couple of steps back. Seeing the man in the doorway, Joe collapsed into the chair, nearly passing out. Well, hello, Joe, said in a rough voice an unknown man in an expensive suit worth at least several thousand euros. Good afternoon, Mickey, said the director, stammering slightly. Who hurt Annabelle? No way, you just misunderstood. No one hurt her, it was just a bad joke, and I wanted to call to apologize. Joe tried to justify himself. From the description, it's you, Mickey said menacingly, glancing toward Kathy. The man's hard and piercing gaze was so intimidating that it made the girl want to go to the bathroom. At that moment, she regretted all the jokes and teasing she had used to taunt Annabelle. I didn't mean to hurt her. They were just jokes. I'm sorry, Katie replied in a pitiful voice. My wife has no secrets and she told me everything. You called her a country bumpkin. Well, I'm from the village too. Who's gonna be the first to make a joke about me or maybe come up with a funny quip? Let's have some fun together. No one was making fun of anyone. She just misunderstood me. The journalist continued to justify herself, but all her attempts were in vain. Look for a new job, Mickey summarized and closed the door behind him. Who is this guy? Asked Kathy to Joe. Once the two of them were alone in the office. Mickey, the owner of our magazine and husband of Annabelle, whom you managed to offend. Congratulations, you and I and the whole office are now unemployed. So the owner of the magazine is from the capital. What are he and his wife doing here? They got tired of the metropolitan life and decided to move back to their hometown. Annabelle did not want to sit on her husband's neck and decided to realize herself by getting a job in our office. What are we going to do now? Katie asked in confusion. Look for a job and believe me, if the others have any chance at all, you're doomed, Joe answered and started packing. After leaving and locking up the office, he informed the staff that they were all unemployed and could go home. They could thank Kathy for that, who had decided that her ego was more important than the lives of the dozens of people who worked in the office every day. The girl realized that now a barrage of criticism would fall on her, and trying to avoid a scandal, hurriedly ran out of the building. Back home, she cried and realized that she had broken the life not only of herself, but also of her colleagues. The next morning, she gathered her thoughts and began calling other magazines looking for a job. After a few phone calls, Kathy realized that finding a decent job with good pay wasn't as easy as she thought. Some said they were fully staffed, others declined her services and attributed it to a personal request from Mickey. With each subsequent call, the girl realized that she had less and less chance of finding any work in her specialty. Soon her luck smiled, and the director of a small publication invited her for an interview. Gathering herself, she hurried to the meeting and prayed that everything would be successful. Once on the threshold of the building, Kathy crossed herself and went inside. The secretary met the girl and led her to the chief. "Hello, my name is Kathy. I called you the other day." "Hi, come in. I'm Arnold. You said you had a position for me. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?" "Yeah, we recently laid off our horoscope man. Do you have experience in that niche?" "Are you kidding or are you serious?" "No, I'm dead serious. Something's wrong. I was hoping you'd offer me the editor-in-chief position, or at the very least, invite me to be a celebrity columnist." "No, I'm sorry, but we have a full staff and this is the only spot available." "I'm sorry too, but I didn't spend all those years studying and working at a prestigious magazine to write horoscopes for the back page of your newspaper, which will only be read by a couple of grandmothers," Katie said rudely, realizing that she was being offered a terrible job with minimum wage. "Well, in that case, don't you dare delay you," rudely responded the man who decided to refuse the girl's services. "Goodbye," Katie replied and left Arnold's office, slamming the door loudly. For several days after that, the journalist continued to call newspapers and magazines in search of a more suitable place. Realizing that there was no choice, she again dared to call Arnold and was agreed to the position of a man who compiled horoscopes. But it turned out that this position had already been filled by a less fastidious person who was willing to work for a small salary. Losing all hope, Kathy decided to call her old coworkers. She believed that one of them would help her or offer her a more interesting job, since they were not subject to Annabelle's husband's ban. "Hi, Lucy. How have you found a job yet, or are you looking for one too?" asked Katie, getting through to one of her coworkers. "Hi, Katie. Yeah, I'm fine. I got a job at a rival magazine. The pay's a bit lower, but the bosses are good and the staff are nice." "Oh, I see. Do you have room for me? You're not cut out for a simple and lesser-known magazine. I thought you wanted a bigger salary than before." "No, I'll take whatever you want, since Annabelle's husband made sure I wasn't hired by the prestigious glossy magazines." "I'm sorry, I can't help you. I got this job with difficulty and I don't want to ruin my relationship with the management because of an arrogant upstart," Lucy answered rudely and hung up the phone. Realizing that the first option was out of the question, Katie decided to call Tony. "Hi, how are you?" she asked unobtrusively. "Hi, I wasn't expecting your call. I'm doing great. I've become editor of a small newspaper." "Cool, cool. Congratulations. How would you like to hire a reporter to do all your assignments?" "You mean you?" "Don't be ridiculous. You don't lift a finger unless you're yelled at. I'm not gonna have a relationship with you like Joe, so I don't think we're gonna work. I'd do anything to take me in. I'm sorry, but I've already lost one job because of you. I don't want to lose that one too," Tony replied dryly and hung up the phone just as Lucy had done. Katie realized that her colleagues resented her and, despite having a new job, still didn't want to talk to her. There was practically no money left to live on, so the girl did not hesitate to call the third colleague as well. "Hi, Nani, how are you?" Katie asked, having reached the last of the journalists, with whom she had worked for more than 1 year. "Hello, yes. Everything seems to be fine. I've been invited to the Capitol and given a position in the head office. How are you?" "I'm fine, but I'm having trouble with work." "Doesn't anyone need such a valuable staff?" Nanny asked with irony in her voice. "There are a couple of offers, but I would like a more interesting salary and vacancy." "Take it, or they won't hire you there either," she said mockingly and hung up the phone, not wanting to continue the conversation with Kathy. Having lost the last hope for a normal job, the girl bought a newspaper with advertisements and started calling vacancies with more or less decent salaries. Getting one rejection after another, she realized that work in the city was harder than she thought. Every decent organization refused her services on Mickey's personal errand. Others simply didn't need the services of a girl who worked as a journalist for a defunct publication. A few more days pass, and Katie realizes that the money is running out. There is no choice left, and she starts calling the remaining ads with the hope that at least someone will hire her. The only one who invited the journalist for an interview was the owner of a shopping center. Realizing that there is no other hope, Katie hurries to meet Andrew and is ready for any, even the most humiliating and low-paid job. "Hi, my name is Katie. I called you a couple hours ago and you said you had some openings." "Hi, yes, I'm looking for an appliance loader, but I realize that this is obviously not the right position for you. Unfortunately, the only job I have for girls is as a cleaner." "I'm ready," Katie replied, stepping over herself. She realized that she couldn't find a lower-paid job, but at least there was some money here, so she wouldn't starve to death. "Good, then you are accepted, and you can start your duties tomorrow." "Thank you." The girl thanked Andrew sincerely, as he was the only one willing to give her a job. The next morning, she started her immediate duties, changing her expensive evening dress into her work clothes. She felt humiliated but realized she had no other choice. Katie did her job diligently and ran around the floors of the mall like a robot, making sure the place was clean and tidy. While cleaning the first floor, she noticed Mickey escorting a gorgeous girl in a beautiful and expensive dress. Thinking that the man was with his mistress, Kathy decided to follow him. Taking out her phone, she wanted to take some compromising photos and upload them to Annabelle to strike back. When she got a little closer, Katie was speechless because the stunning girl in the red evening dress was Annabelle, who was strolling through the boutiques with her husband. Realizing that the revenge plan had failed, Katie was angry with the girl and blamed her for everything that was happening to her now. The girl did not admit her guilt and did not think that her jokes led to this. She was convinced that it was Annabelle who had broken her fate, and her husband had done everything to make her a cleaning lady. Walking along the stores, Annabelle spotted a shabby-looking Katie in horrible clothes with a dirty rag in her hands. Looking her straight in the eye, she didn't give any sign that she recognized her and walked past her as if she was seeing the girl for the first time. A week later, Joe calls Kathy and tells her that Mickey has taken pity on them and decided to rebuild the office. He's already in the office and is waiting for the girl provided she still needs a job. Dropping the rag and mop, Kathy wasted no time and ran to the office. As she swung the door open with all her might, she saw the familiar faces of Nanny, Lucy, and Tony in front of her. Soon in the office appeared and Lily, who, unlike the others, could not run to work due to age. Former employees gather under one roof, and it seems that everything will become as it was before. Having received another responsible assignment from the editor-in-chief, Katie works diligently because she realizes that she no longer wants to lose such an interesting and lucrative job. To return to the shopping center and wash floors, the girl does not want to, as she realizes what hard work is, which is paid with low wages. At the end of the working day, she tries to go into Joe's office to thank him, but it turns out that the door is locked, and the chief was absent from the office. The next day, the team is once again working up a sweat, not paying attention to what's going on around them. Trying to squeeze the most out of themselves, they refuse lunch and the usual tea party. Trying to prove her loyalty to the chief, Katie works as well as the others, and in many respects even surpasses her colleagues. Toward evening, she again tries to meet with Joe, but history repeats itself, and the door to his office is locked. The girl tries to talk to Lily and find out about the disappearance of the chief, but it turns out that she does not know anything either. She receives the assignment by email, and she hasn't contacted Joe directly for several days. This seems strange, since the man did not talk about business trips, and his health is excellent, so he could not get sick. Worried about the condition of her lover, Katie decides to go to his house. Having rung the doorbell, she hopes to see Joe, as suddenly the door is opened by an unknown girl. "Hello, who are you here to see?" the stranger asks kindly. "Hello, I'd like to talk to Joe," Kathy replied, shocked, not expecting to see another girl in her lover's apartment. "Just a moment," the stranger replied and went back into the apartment to call Joe. Minutes later, the man walks out into the stairwell and covers the door. Can you explain to me who this is? This is Jean, my girlfriend. We've been dating for a few months now, and we're planning a wedding soon. As you can see, you don't have your old trump cards, but you won't need them. What do you mean? I'm leaving for the capital tomorrow morning, and I'm not likely to come back. What about our office? Surprised, Katie asks, forgetting about Jean and the breakup with her lover. I've been invited to a more attractive position, so I'm not going to turn it down. You have a new boss, and you'll probably meet him in person tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, but I have to go. Otherwise, my beloved will have a lot of questions about your night visit. Goodbye, Joe finally said and closed the door behind him. The next morning, Kathy rushes to the office and tells her co-workers that Joe has left them and is leaving for New York. Who will now be the boss? It is unknown, but it is unlikely to expect anything good. Just then, Annabelle walks through the door and heads for the principal's office. Unlocking the door with her key, the girl calls Lily to her. A few minutes later, it turns out that Annabelle is the new principal who has decided to reassemble the old team. Realizing that she is unlikely to treat her well, Katie becomes an indispensable, but at the same time invisible employee. Trying to keep as quiet as possible, the journalist tries not to draw much attention to herself and hopes that she can latch on to the job and beg forgiveness from the girl she until recently called the village simpleton. Lucy, Nanny, and Tony notice a change in Katie's behavior and don't miss the opportunity to make fun of her during the lunch break. Are you kidding me? Tony asked, not hiding his smile. Yeah, you're gone. I don't know what's going to happen to you, Lucy added. Where's your pride gone? You've been telling her for so long, telling Joe you get a better job than this, and now you're just sitting on your ass. Are you afraid of being unemployed? Nanny encouraged the dialogue. Leave me alone. I don't want to discuss anything. Katie reacted sharply, grabbed a cup of tea, and returned to her workplace, realizing that her life and career directly depend on the girl she insulted. Katie does her job as diligently and efficiently as possible. The journalist is ahead of all the deadlines and expectations of Lily, which causes the respect of the editor-in-chief. A couple of days later, Annabelle leaves the office and, after looking around the office, invites Katie to join her. Realizing that there are no more chances to turn away, the girl goes to talk to her boss. In her mind, she is already saying goodbye to her computer and chair, realizing that she will have to clean the floors again. Most likely, Annabelle couldn't forgive me and will fire me, and she will do it in disgrace, Katie thought in her head, realizing that she had done too many stupid things. Hi. Come in and have a seat, Annabelle began sweetly enough. Hello. Did you want something? The girl asked kindly and quietly, mentally scrambling for a more suitable opening. Yes, I read your latest article and I'm honestly pleasantly surprised. Before, you were not capable of preparing such high-quality and interesting materials as you do now. Thank you, Katie replied, embarrassed. She didn't understand why Annabella wasn't angry at all and was being so nice to her. I thought about it and decided that you've been working here long enough that you deserve a promotion. If you keep working at this pace and don't lose quality, I can offer you the assistant editor position in a couple months. Lily wants to quit at the end of the year, so you can take her place if you perform well. What? I have a chance to become editor-in-chief, Katie decided to ask, not believing her ears. It all depends on you and how hard you work. But yes, there is a chance, confirmed Annabelle. Why are you being so nice to me when I've said and done so many stupid things? Asked Katie. You see, it makes no sense for me to hurt you. I've never been a competitor for you and I've always concentrated on my work. You cared about your personal ego ambitions going 10 steps ahead of you. Then you hurt me badly and my husband acted like a man by protecting the one he loved. When I saw you at the mall, I realized that you were able to come down to earth and realized that you are not the navel of the earth. You realize that everyone has to go through this sooner or later. And I'm glad you're past that stage. I mean, I had to get my face in the mud. You understood me correctly. You have passed this path and now you can take up your mind, correcting old mistakes and starting your life with a clean slate. Moreover, now you know the real value of your workplace and will work better than your colleagues so that you don't lose the job you love and a decent salary. I won't fire you since you have learned your lesson. It seems to me that you will never again judge people or try to demonstrate your superiority over them. You're right. I'm sorry for everything, Katie replied, realizing that this phase was necessary. It hurts to fall down your nose in the mud, but sometimes you have to do it, because it's the only way to realize the value of the simple things that surround you every day.